Alright, so a lot of persons have been asking me to please make a video about quadratic equations, or please make a video. I read a lot of comments under the live videos, and a lot of persons have been asking. And upon trying to make this video, I then realized that there were some key things that you needed to know, and I don't know if everybody knows it, but there are some key things that you needed to know before you can go ahead and solving a whole quadratic equation, right? I realized that you needed to know how to factorize, and upon doing factorization, I then realized that you also needed to know some key things before you can do factorizing, which then brought me to today's topic. All right, so before we go into today's topic, play the intro there for me. Now let's get straight into today's lesson. The topic that we'll be looking at today is the distributive law. Now the distributive law is one of the most important topics in maths. This lesson will be useful for students from grade 7 straight to 11, because that is when you'll be using distributive law. As long as you're in secondary school, you will use this law. Now the important thing is to not only understand how to do the distributive law, but it's to understand the concept of the distributive law. Now let me give you a scenario. Alright, so imagine there is a household of 5 children. And in that household of 5 children, there's a rich uncle from the USA. Now that rich uncle decides that he will distribute 100 US to everybody in the household, to all 5 members. So upon distributing that 100 US, do you think that uncle will give the 100 US to just one child or 2 child? No. He will have to give the 100 US to each and every single child in the household. So that is the whole idea about the distributive law. Alright, so from that scenario, what the distributive law is basically telling you is that you take a number and you distribute it to each member of a group that is adding or subtracting. Now here's an example. Now we have the term 3 open bracket x plus y, and it says simplify using the distributive law. So what we will basically do, we take this 3 and we're distributing it to these two terms. When we say distribute, we mean multiply, right? So this 3 will multiply this x, and you put back the plus sign, plus the 3 multiplied by the y. And 3 times x will give you 3x, plus 3 times y will give you 3y. And that is the whole idea of the distributive law. Simple as that. Alright, so let's look at this second example quickly. And the instruction is to simplify using the distributive law. Once again, the term that is outside of the bracket has to be distributed to each number or each term that is inside the bracket. So this x got to be distributed to this here, and it also got to be distributed to this here, and it also got to be distributed to this here. Each term, alright? So this x will multiply the 2x, plus the x will multiply the 3y, plus the x will multiply the 5. And x times 2x, that will give you 2x squared, plus x times 3y, that will give you 3xy, plus x times 5 will give you 5x. Right? And that is how you distribute for that question there. Alright, so we have a third example. We have 2 brackets multiplying each other. Now can we use the distributive law to simplify this? Of course. We just have to, this is what we gotta do for a question like this. We see 2 terms here. So we're taking these 2 terms and we're multiplying it by these 2 terms in this bracket. We're taking it term by term. So let's deal with the x first. So we're taking the x and we're multiplying it by the bracket, which is x plus 4. And then now we take the 3. This is a plus 3. And we multiply it by the bracket, which is x plus 4. And then we just use a distributive law and we simplify it. This will be, I think everybody should get the hang of it by now. X times x will give you x squared plus x times 4 will give you 4x plus 3 times x will give you 3x. 3 times 4 will give you 12. And now we're not finished as yet. You know, from the previous lesson we have two like terms here, so we gotta add those two like terms. So that would be x squared 4x plus 3x will give you 7x plus 12. And that is how you distribute, or that is how you use the distributive law when you have two brackets with two terms inside. Alright, so we have the final example. It says x minus 1, all of that is raised to the square power. And it says, the question says, simplify using the distributive law. That is the instruction. So how can we do that? Now this square is basically telling you that this bracket, everything in this bracket is multiplying itself. So what we'll have here is x minus 1 times x minus 1. And then we use the distributive law to simplify. So this will be, this will be x times everything in this bracket, x minus 1, and then we'll do the minus 1 times everything in this bracket, x minus 1, and then we just distribute. X times x will give you x squared, x times negative 1 will give you negative x. Everybody should know that, right? Negative 1 times x will give you another negative x, and negative 1 times negative 1, that will give you a positive 1, because a negative times a negative will give you a positive, and 1 times 1 will give you 1. So good, we have two like terms again, so we gotta subtract those two, right? So this will be x squared and a negative x minus x. This is like if you got negative 1 minus 1, right? Because if you don't see any number, in front of a letter, a 1 is in front. So negative 1 minus 1, that will give you what? A negative 2. So negative x times minus x will give you a negative 2x plus 1. And that is how you square a bracket. Alright? Simple. So if you have any questions, leave it in the comment. And this brings us to the end of this lesson of Introduction to the Distributive Law. Ciao.